You've probably had people ask you, "Are you ready for your wedding?" But have you had people ask you, "Are you ready for your marriage?" Because most people have no idea even what that means. Being ready for marriage doesn't mean you have everything figured out. It doesn't mean that you are never going to argue or that you agree on everything. And it definitely doesn't mean that you found somebody who completes you so perfectly that marriage will be easy. Here's what I think being ready for marriage really means. You know how to have the conversations that marriage will require. Today, I'm going to give you 7 questions that will reveal more about your marriage readiness than just how much do you love each other? Seriously, think about as an engaged couple, all the things you have to think about the flowers, the venue, the food, the guest list, the honeymoon, so many things. You probably have a 47 tab spreadsheet for your wedding. Of course, I am not saying that wedding planning isn't important. Of course, it is. What I am saying, though, is that your wedding is one day, your marriage is all the days that come after it. So, when you think about preparing for your marriage, I want you to think about the conversations that you need to have that are going to impact your life long after that cake is eaten and those thank you notes are written. These are not compatibility questions where you feel like you have to have the right answer. In fact, you might even discover that you don't agree, and that's okay. The goal is not to become two people who agree all the time. The goal is to become two people who know how to talk about what matters. So let's get into the 7 questions that all engaged couples should consider before marriage. Here's the first question. Can we talk about something uncomfortable without trying to win? Communication before marriage isn't about whether or not you can talk. You probably talk all the time. It's whether or not you can stay connected even when you're talking and it becomes uncomfortable. Think about this. Can your partner say to you, "That hurt my feelings," or "I see things differently than you do," or "Maybe I'm actually worried about this," without you becoming defensive when they say something like that? A healthy conversation doesn't require you to agree. It requires you to stay curious instead of becoming defensive. Here's a great conversation starter. What's something you've been hesitant to bring up because you're worried about how I'll respond? Now, that might be a little uncomfortable. Good. Some of the most important conversations are. Here's number 2. What do we expect marriage to change about us? This one is sneaky because we all bring expectations into our marriage, and sometimes those expectations have never been said out loud. Once we're married, he will, or once we're married, she will, or once we're married, we will finally. Maybe you think marriage will make your partner more responsible, more affectionate, more organized, less stressed, more interested in your hobbies. Or maybe you think marriage will automatically make you feel more secure. But here's the problem. Unspoken expectations usually become future disappointments. So here's a really important marriage preparation question. What do you expect to be different about our relationship once we're married? And then ask, what do you expect to stay exactly the same? Because marriage does change things, but marriage doesn't magically change people. Number 3, can we disagree without questioning the relationship? Let me say something that might surprise you. You're going to disagree. Even if you're super compatible, madly in love, you're soulmates, you're still going to disagree because you are two different human beings. You have different experiences, different preferences, different personalities, different opinions. The goal is not to eliminate conflict. It's to learn how to handle conflict well. So instead of wondering, are we going to fight? Ask the question, what happens to us when we disagree? Do we get defensive or do we shut down? Do we chase each other or do we avoid each other? Do we try to solve everything immediately? Do we know how to repair after we've hurt each other? That's a much better indicator of marriage readiness. Number 4, have you talked about money beyond your wedding? Because you've probably talked about your wedding budget, but have you talked about your marriage budget? How much should you be saving? How much debt do you have? What does financial security mean to each of you? What is considered a big purchase? Are you a spender? Are you a saver? Are you somewhere in between? And perhaps the bigger question, what did money mean in the families that you grew up in? Because you're not just combining bank accounts, you're combining beliefs about money. Those beliefs may be very different. So try this conversation. What did you learn about money growing up? And what do you want our marriage to be like financially? That question is going to open a much deeper conversation than just whose job is it to pay the bills. Number 5. What happens when our families have different expectations? This is one of those conversations that engaged couples will many times postpone because, well, right now everybody's getting along. So it's really easy to say, we'll figure it out until Thanksgiving. Talk about now. How involved will your parents or your siblings be? What traditions matter? What boundaries will you have? What happens if one family expects something the other family doesn't? And eventually, there may be conversations about children, caregiving, vacations, and other family responsibilities. You aren't marrying two families, but you are marrying someone who comes from a family. So I have 2 questions for you to ask each other. What family traditions are important to you? And what boundaries do you think we'll need to create as a married couple? Number 6, do we know how each other wants to be loved when life gets hard? This is different than asking what's your love language, though that is a fun conversation. I want you to go a level deeper. Ask, when you are stressed, what do you actually need from me? Because one of you may want to talk and the other one needs space. One of you may need reassurance. The other wants practical help. One of you wants a hug. And the other wants 10 quiet minutes to themselves, just so they don't say something they might regret. Here's the beautiful thing, you don't have to guess. You can ask. Try this. When you're having a really hard day, what's the most helpful thing I can do? That's an incredibly useful conversation that you can have before marriage. And this last question may be the most important one. Can we tell each other the truth even when we're afraid? Because really, the couples I worry about aren't the ones who disagree. They're the ones who have already figured out how to completely avoid any difficult conversations. It's the couple who says, I'm fine when it really isn't. Or the couple who says, it doesn't really matter when it actually matters a lot. Or the couple who thinks, I don't want to bring this up right now because, well, we're engaged and everything is supposed to just be happy. Your engagement period is not the time to just pretend everything is perfect. It's the time to practice being honest. So ask each other, is there anything you're afraid to tell me because you're worried it could change the way I see you or change our relationship? Now, I am not saying go looking for problems. What I'm saying is I want you to create enough space for emotional safety so honesty has somewhere to land. Because the conversations that couples avoid during their engagement, they don't just disappear. They many times end up becoming problems during their marriage. So let's go back to the original question. Are you actually ready for marriage? Maybe. But notice what all 7 of these questions have in common. None of them ask, do you have the same answer? They're not compatibility tests. They're not designed to determine if you're right for each other. They're designed to help you discover, how do we think? What do we expect? What matters most to us? Because I don't believe that marriage readiness means that you've figured everything out. I believe marriage readiness means you are willing to keep figuring things out together. That's the difference between simply planning for your wedding or intentionally preparing for your marriage. And if you're watching this thinking, yeah, we need to have some of these conversations, well, that's exactly why I created my course, Conversations Before I Do. It's a guided experience for engaged couples, self paced to walk you through all of those conversations that you want to have before you say I do. Because I don't want you to sit across from each other at dinner and say, so, what do you want to talk about? I've already done that part for you. There's a link to learn more in the description, or you can just go to preaisle.com/conversations. If you talk about even just one of these 7 questions together, I would love to know how it went. Tell me in the comments, which question was it and how did it go? If you're engaged and haven't subscribed yet, go ahead. You can do that right now because I have new content coming out all the time about having great conversations so you can build that intentional marriage before you say, I do.